Hi there, welcome to Single Dads Unplugged. This is season 5 and I am your host, Sithembiso Phakathi, also founder and executive producer of the Single Dads Network. And with me today, I've got Muzi Mtshali, and I'd like you to introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about the work that you do around parenting. And we're going to talk later about your movement as well as your book. Maybe introduce yourself first.
All right. The name AK that I used, right?
Sure.
It's Motha Mtshali.
Oh, okay.
Basically, I'm an author, a husband, and a father. You know,
Great.
Those are the 3 things that define me.
Great.
So everything else emanates from that.
From that, yeah. I like that. Maybe talk to us about the family, and I'm gonna talk to you later about the book that you wrote and what it's about, and maybe your journey as a father and how you got there and how your experiences have been as a father and as a husband.
Okay. So I'm married to Lucille Wagahateb.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. She gave us 2 beautiful kids.
That's nice.
A son and a daughter.
Okay.
So my journey as a father, it's a difficult one. I wish to say it's an easy one, but it's a tough one.
Yes.
I think what makes it tough is the fact that, you know, a lot of things, a lot of qualities that we develop to be successful as men, to be successful in life, they undermine the qualities that we need to love at home. You know, the things I do to be loved divorces me from love itself, because out there you just have to be aggressive. You have to be aggressive, you know, not show emotions. You know, if you must be like that. But now, strong. When you get home, that doesn't work. When you get home now, you have to be sensitive, and it's something I'm not familiar with. And I find that to be challenging for me, because I'm all about tough love. Tough love, you know. And at times, and the kids we are raising currently, now you have to be there, you have to listen to them, you have to be sensitive.
And they've got opinions these days, and they've got ideas, they've got opinions, they've got a say. You know, we need to allow them. I found the journey to be tough in that sense. I have to be a provider, but at the same time, I have to be present at home. How do I balance that? You know, because what's expected of me is to be out there, is to ensure that the family is well taken care of, and I'm taking that from my dad. Okay. My dad was hardly present at home because he was just working. Always at work.
Yes. Pumango 5 fixing, comes back late. When he comes back late, he's tired. But my mom would appreciate Uguti. We have clothes. It's taking us to school. That would be enough. But with the current generation, doing just that is not enough.
No, it's not enough. You have to build a relationship with them. And they have to know. But how has this been for you? Were you always passionate about parenting from the beginning when you started your relationship, or is it something that you learned along the line?
It's something I learned. One thing I knew was I had to get married. I was raised up in that family that believed in the institution. So one thing I knew is before I can even think of kids, I have to have a wife. That was clear. I knew if I didn't do it in that manner.
You wanted a setting like that, to raise your kids.
Even before I understood what marriage means for men, for women, for society in general, I just knew with my parents wouldn't be proud of me if I had kids out of wedlock. So I had to get married. And then I appreciate the fact that I did that, because there's a lot of things I learned about myself in marriage that have allowed me to be a better father right now.
Things like what?
You know, my daughter, you always think you are always right. Somehow, whatever you think about, whatever you want to do, those decisions shouldn't be questioned, because
you always have to be in charge and be in control.
Yes. You know.
How did you challenge yourself from that standpoint?
So it's just having someone who's different from me, because a woman is just different from you.
No, they are different.
You know, you focus a lot on logic. She focuses on emotions. You know, we can get into a space and I talk to someone, I'm not even focusing on how they feel and the things they're saying. My wife will look at the body language. That's when you just are focused on what they are saying, but look at the body language. And
she's looking at different things.
Yes. Yeah. And that's crucial when it comes to kids as well. It's not always about interbaishoyo. It's how do they feel, Yeah. But I don't have that sensitive
It's about
part,
feelings and emotions.
Yeah. So I had to develop that. There's an author, I forgot his name. He's written a book. It's titled the Boy Crisis.
Okay.
He talks about the dead brain. Okay. Once you become a father, a present father, you develop that dead brain. So the dead brain is the brain now that allows you now to be more. So there's a chemical that is being stimulated in your body that allows you to be more trusting, to be to have those bonds with your kids, to be more sensitive. Yeah, that's what I'm learning currently. But nomgami first to be sensitive to her needs, to be able to listen to her, to be able to take some of her inputs, even though I feel I don't agree with them, know, but because of this is a partnership. So I find those things work now, even with my kids. But
you have to consider other opinions as well.
Yes.
Let's talk now about the relationship with the kids themselves. You're so passionate about present fatherhood and fathers being present in the kids' lives. How did you inspire yourself to even get to a point of believing and being passionate about being present? And how have you built relationships with them?
So
how did it start?
I think how it started is when I was doing a lot of talks on marriages, and when I was starting to engage with a lot of couples, I then realized, no man, marriage doesn't start at the altar.
Okay.
Actually, where does marriage start? Marriage starts when we are born.
Okay.
So everything that happens from our upbringing will affect us in marriage. Okay. So now, instead of focusing on just these people when they're now in that relationship, how was this individual raised?
Okay.
If I was raised in a home where the father is absent, we haven't established some level of values, some level of boundaries. Because what boundaries do, they make you be aware of someone else's feelings.
Okay.
If I say you don't take aware
it's the
of
discipline.
That,
yes.
Discipline. So even when you are growing up, you don't have those poor impulses. Abantu were not raised with boundaries about now.
Yes.
So now I realize, actually, even for the husband to be a good husband, that person must be raised in a good environment.
Yeah.
The environment is channel be conscious of someone else, be considerate, be egotistic.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, actually, the role I'm playing in my kids' life is very important. So it was my work and family, because as a man, I'm defined by that.
It was my the profession first.
Yes, I'm defined by the capacity to provide. So I was like, my work and family. But once I had kids, I realized, no.
It's the other way around.
No, it's the other way around. I'd rather lose the work and be present.
But be present in the family.
Yes, because if I make a mistake here, it's going to be generational. Whereas with my job, I can easily get another job.
You can shift to something else.
Even if it's not well paying, but I can get another one. But if I make a mistake with my kids, it's not only my kids but affect her. It's my grandkids.
You're creating a vibration that is going to go down your generation.
Do I want that? Do I want that in my conscience? No, I don't. So that's when I think it started to shift for me. Okay, let's go back to families. How are people raised? How can we ensure good people realize the importance of being present?
So how did you start creating that value system and getting, involved in the family and making sure that your role is very specific, especially with your kids?
I think ukufunda. A lot of people, because we are adults, we tend to think we know everything. We don't know everything.
Of course. We're learning all the
time. Just have that grace and be mindful of that now.
Sure.
Don't think you know everything. I listen more to my wife now because she also have an idea of what your father is. She was raised in that setup. Yes. So I say I'm as much as I'm a man and I'm a father, but my wife can contribute to that because she has a different perspective that I'm not aware of. I'm living it. Some of the things I do, at times they get toxic, and I'm not aware of that. So when we're having those conversations, so make me aware of those things. You are being too hard on the kids, you know. So we're like, why are you saying that? And then
when you're raising awareness, so that was raising awareness from her point of view.
Yes.
About the way you relate to the kids.
Yes, because what I would do, for instance, I tease my kids a lot because I'll tell my wife, and my dad used to tease me a lot about that, and I found it helped me at school.
Okay.
When people are doing that, it didn't have that much of an effect because from home they were already doing that, and I learned to have comebacks. So now when I go to school, it was easy. So I found that to work with my kids. Take
built a foundation, a different foundation.
Yes. You know, so. When I tease them, my wife like, no.
Are they like you?
Yes.
Do they resemble you?
Yes, you know. So I'm already aware what they're gonna face out there. So if let me start doing it at home. It's like a vaccine in a way. What I'm giving you here is nothing compared to what you get outside. But at least get used to it. However, it helps when you have a woman beside you because she can tell now. The kid is getting emotional, you know, and then please stop. So there's a whole lot of
becoming more aware about those things.
You know, aware of people's feelings. Because one of the things, part of male bonding is that teasing.
Yeah.
If you don't know each other's men, the first thing we're gonna do,
you must laugh with your kids and even cry together.
You know,
that's part of building a relationship.
Yes. So now, what's more important is, as much as I do that, just be aware if a person feels a certain way about what you are saying, you know, and so I think that's one thing that I'm continuously learning from my wife as well, and then from the kids.
From the kids as well.
And they're smart. You know, I come from.
Are they teenagers yet?
No, the oldest is 7. He's 7. You know, I grew up in an environment where ingan, that's it. Ingane yokuthu.
And they don't have an opinion.
No input. All. So you come with that mindset as well.
I was raised like that as well.
You know, ingan. But when I listen to these kids speak, and you're like,
actually, they've got good ideas.
Yeah, I want to buy a peel.
And this generation is exposed to so much information, and you can't take it for granted that they don't have things to say about anything.
Yes.
So before we come to your book, I want to talk about this movement. Maybe talk to us about the shirt that you're wearing. How did and talk maybe a little bit about the movement itself, and how you conceived the idea about fatherlessness and what you wanna do about it.
Okay, so same thing I touched on earlier, just being involved in my kids' life and just reading a lot around female and what it means to be present for kids.
Yes.
And I looked at the state of South Africa, especially us as a band, you know.
Yeah.
It's only 31% of kids stay with their dads.
Stay with their dads.
Compared to our counterparts like whites and Indians, which is like 80%.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, man, this cannot be right.
Can be.
This cannot be right. And there's a whole lot of issues. So maybe the movement itself, right, is a petition to get to government to create legislation to get fathers involved in their kids' life. Wow. So what we are saying is every child has a right to be raised by both parents. And if one parent is not present, they are committing an offense.
Oh,
you know, so
that's
the foundation.
That's a foundation.
So, and what we are saying is we will have guidelines.
Sure.
We're not saying currently if this comes into law, then I'm absent father, they will be criminalized. No,
of course.
This would only start after the legislation, if it's passed.
Of course.
We'll have guidelines that will determine or define what is an absent father, and if they miss certain things,
certain criteria,
then that would constitute an absent father.
You
know. So what we are trying to push is, I'm well aware that a whole lot of men are not raised by their fathers, and the men like that.
Exactly.
They don't have an idea.
They are fatherless fathers.
Yes. Because if you're not raised by a man, first you don't understand being a man generally. So Baba, that's something different as well. So now this legislation, what it will do, it will try to educate those men. Okay. Now if you have a kid, there will be a mediator.
Yes.
Throughout that journey, because it's a tough journey. It's tough staying with your kids, with your wife. So imagine when there's a whole lot of dynamics where with
you don't live together. And maybe sometimes you're not even in a relationship anymore.
Yes.
And there's a child involved.
You see. Yeah. So all those things. And then ultimately, if Abantu Besilisa doesn't can, we are saying there should be a prison sentence.
Okay.
But now the sentence, if you are found guilty of being absent, you don't serve it in prison. We give you these red overalls.
Okay.
If you go to your church wearing this red overalls.
Yes, so, because it exposes you.
Yes, because that's what's happening.
And it also reminds you that you have actually almost abdicated your responsibility as a dad.
Because that's what you want to do. You don't want men in prison. We have enough men in prison already.
Lots.
But we want men to be aware of what you are doing right now. You are increasing the rate of crime, dropout at school, suicide rates, teenage pregnancy, violence in schools. That's what you are contributing to.
And we know what fatherlessness does to the kids, not just the fathers themselves, but the impact to the child.
So it's a huge problem. I feel a whole lot of problems we have in South Africa just by fathers being involved.
The impact on society is amazing, especially to the boy child.
Gangsterism will drop. Kids being involved in sports is cool, all those things. So,
and discipline and value systems.
I wish men could realize how important they are.
What can we do before we criminalize absent fatherhood?
Yeah.
What can we do? I was talking to a group of boys 2 weeks ago. I took them to Hennep's for a hike. We were working with the kids' haven in Benoni, where she comes from. I was saying to those boys, how do they look for identity? Because as you would imagine, teenagers would want to know, who do I look like? Who do I resemble? And if they don't find that person, they resort to all kinds of things to try and find identity. What can we do in communities to even start talking about the impact of being present? Is there something, working with our network and maybe other organizations, have you thought about just, I was saying to Sam Mohopa, who's the CEO of Kids Haven, maybe we should go to the taverns and townships where fathers are and ask them questions about how you're navigating the fatherhood. I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I think it has to start somewhere. Just talking about, are you really there for your kids? Do you know where they are? Do you know what they're doing and what they're going through? What do you think?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. But what I think we can do to achieve that, I look at the movement, for example, the Alphabet Gang.
Okay.
We are more accepting now as a society, not because we read some book or it was preached at church, but because on media, on TV, we started to see a lot of it.
A lot of
media
it.
Is so
it's
powerful.
Just awareness.
Yes,
just
it's so
creating
powerful.
Awareness.
Now, when you look at your ads, you look at TV. They promote single parenthood. They promote marriage is not part of that now anymore, unless it's a storyline about cheating and all that. But we hardly see a storyline that will reflect
that promote
our father to be involved. I think if you can have a lot of that, because most people immediately consume it. Be it social media or traditional media, they consume it. Yes. I think if in those spaces our government can be intentional, our SOPs.
Yes.
We have dads who are
and be geared toward that.
Yes, but you look at our SOPs, men who are there are not your traditional masculine men, because that is not goes against the agenda currently. So it will be women instead who are powerful. It will be women who's in charge of Ikaya. And that type of men won't have a man. And they present that woman as a superhero, when in reality we know single parents are struggling. And that's one thing people don't know. Single parents are struggling. It's hard to raise kids. Kunzima saw it too. I will see my wife. There was a time where I'll be like, you know what, babe? I will take you to the Val at home, Guinea, so that you can take a break. Your mom can take care of these kids.
It's demanding.
Because I can
Parenting
see what
is
is
demanding.
draining you. Imagine it's the two of us. So I'm like, if someone is raising a kid by themselves, there's tantrums here.
And it's not even one child. Some are raising many kids by themselves.
I'm surprised how our South African women are still sane, you know.
And they've got jobs, they've got demanding careers, and it's tough out there. Ne? But talk to me now how you're mobilizing society through this movement and how you're gaining traction. Have you got partner groups that you're working with to raise awareness? Are you connecting with policymakers in government, and how are you gaining traction on this topic?
Currently, we don't have any of that. I think we started last month, if not.
Oh, that's good.
Month.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's quite fresh.
What I'm trying to do now is just to push it on the streets. We use our marketing. So we'd have 3 guys who are wearing this.
Oh, yes.
One guy with the board that says, criminalize father absenteeism, sign the petition. For now, we just want those signatures. But more importantly, let's have this conversation. I think it's time. In Escatinisning, we just have someone come with an idea, we crush it. Say, why don't you think of that? Why don't you think of something else? Now, what I'm trying to do is let's put an action first. And then we have a dialogue after.
Yeah, a dialogue.
I'm not saying this is a perfect solution.
Of course.
I know this issue is very complex.
Yeah.
There's no one size fit all solution to it. But we have to start somewhere. And I believe we should start from being present. Because when we are having our discussions, kids are growing.
Their kids are growing, and they're resenting you as they grow, and you remain being absent, and then they're resenting you. And by the time you start forming a relationship, you're playing catch up.
And people don't understand. These are human beings.
Yeah.
I will see with my 4-year-old, I'll make a promise, for instance, I'll bring you marshmallow.
Sure.
I was going out.
And you probably forget.
Yes, when I come back, they're looking forward to that.
They remember.
You know, and I think of a dad who's not present, who keeps making promises to the kid. I'm gonna fetch you for this. They don't show up. To them, they're thinking, but when you live with a kid, you realize, no, it's not just ingane. It's a human being now. They have memories.
Yes.
They can be disappointed. They can hate you. You know, so. Now you're seeing all these things happening.
And to correct that behavior, that kind of gap in your life, especially when they're teenagers and it's so entrenched, and to play that catch up, it drains you. Because remember now, as a father or parent, you have to forgo something else to try and build, because now it needs focus.
And it's worse for us men. As I said earlier, we are raised to be strong, and it is we don't have the patience that women have with kids. I see my wife with my kids, I'm like, I could never master that. I could never, just for 2 hours I'm having a conversation with my kids.
Different skill set.
I don't find it stimulating having conversation with my kids at that age. But my wife will do that, you know. So if men are busy having this conversation, because we are logical beings. We like having a conversation before we can act on something. So what I'm trying to do is, let's have this legislation, guys. Let's force ourselves to be present. Sizosibonga in future. But hopefully, probably next year, something we want to get into contact with some of the ministers who will help us put this into parliament and have a discussion how we can make this happen. Because this is not just for kids.
Because even the politicians don't talk a lot about father. I mean, I'm working with the Department of Social Development on a different program for boys. And they don't talk a lot about a boy child. And I was talking to you earlier when we were outside that most support programs championed by government about women and children. But also when they talk children, they talk a girl child. They don't talk about supporting a boy child, because a boy child is just going to grow up and be strong and be a man, and then he must figure out life. So I think there is a demand in society to really support a boy child, because if you can groom a boy child to be a responsible man in the future, we have a chance of breaking the stereotype and the stigma around absent fatherhood. Now, talk to me about this thing around. It's the minute before lobola, or what is it called?
Before lobola.
Talk to us about that. I want to hear more about the book.
So the book, right, which was released in 2021.
Okay.
So I grew up reading a lot of biographies, and one thing I realized is a whole lot of people, my heroes, people I looked up to, your Malcolm X, your Mandelas and the likes.
Yes,
they were married. Almost everyone who was successful was married, and I started to looking at those dynamics, even in the environment I was growing up in. Married men were just different from men who were not. How they carried themselves, how they were dressed. You could tell with Lona Ushati.
It's a bit different.
So I think that's when that journey now, even for me now personal, to say maybe this is something to aim for.
Okay.
So growing up, how I behaved as a young boy was I want to be a husband. So I should keep myself for the person I'm gonna meet. So I think I'm one of the people who were most prepared for marriage. But when I got into it, and then it showed me flames,
I remember you were telling me that.
I always use this example, which I thought once I got married, I won't find other women attractive. I believed that switch would go off.
I don't think it's true.
But
it can't switch off.
To my surprise, did it switch off?
It's just self-control.
Yeah. So, and I felt when that happened, I felt good. Maybe I'm not prepared for it.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not prepared for the journey. That's when I started to read then a lot around marriage, to talk to other men about marriage. And then that's when it hit me. Oh, good. If the guy who thinks was more prepared for this is having challenges with marriage, what about someone who, who's just a chilled guy,
just taking a chance,
how will they fare in this institution? So I wrote a book, just raw. If you read my book, I'm not trying to advise people on how they should act. I'm just giving them accounts of my experiences. I will touch, for example, I got into marriage and thought just loving my wife would be enough. I didn't know what women could take advantage of that.
Wow.
Of you loving them, Uguti, there's this saying in Xhosa, itambo. Something like that.
Exactly.
If I do certain things for you, if I cook for you out of love, because we've established in this marriage, you are the one who does that. It now becomes an expectation. If I do certain things, instead of them being appreciated, now they become a norm in this house.
You normalize it.
Yes. A whole lot of things. When my wife used to go home a lot, when we'd have fights, smaller than a fight, and I'll have to beg her. I'll have to go to her house. Was a skis, baby.
It was a process.
Yes, in those early stages,
Yes.
And then you talk to other men, and I mean, I'm like, no, this guy must have tough love, If I'm not drawing tantrums, I'll go mieg.
Yeah.
I was like, can that work? And then I did that once. We had an argument.
More resilience.
My wife was like, you know what? I'm picking my bags, I'm going home. I was like, I have sis.
Oh, wow.
And then when I did that, something changed in her. Now she was like, okay, what's happening now with this guy? I'm not seeing the begging now. I'm not seeing all those things.
You just said go.
So there's a whole lot of dynamics when it comes to marriage. No matter how well-intentioned you are, even if the wife is also well-intentioned, it's just a man and a woman staying together is difficult. It's two personalities. It's two individuals. It won't be easy. It doesn't matter the level of preparation. It won't be easy, and
it's a lot of work. How would you prepare men that are maybe single and haven't started a family? And I always say in this show that we don't advocate to be perfect in terms of preparing fathers to be good fathers, but for those young people listening and wanting to start a family, what advice would you give them, whether a family with inside of marriage or not? How would you advise them to really go in that kind of environment, situation, more prepared than not?
Okay, firstly, what I advocate for is for men to be married before having kids.
Okay.
That's there because I've seen you hardly find there's this research that was done, right? That shows if kids that I have outside of wedlock.
Yes.
By the age of 4, the fathers are not involved. I think 40 or 50% of fathers no longer involved.
Wow.
7, when they get to 7 years, the number is even higher.
It's even worse.
So now I realize very early on, when a person is not married to that woman, if father involvement, my chances will decrease. So one thing people should be aware of, right? But another thing that is important, be in a space. Being a man, there's a whole lot of things. You cannot just find it in a book.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that is in daughter, ibe daughter.
Okay.
And books are not enough. You need to be in a space. Which men do you look up to? Which men would you like to be? Whether as a husband or a father. Identify that man. Okay. Hang out with that man. Because there are certain things I cannot tell individuals. It's just in your behavior.
Yeah.
How you talk. Let me make this example. How I learned from my dad in my marriage.
Sure.
It's a lot of things that we didn't have a conversation with my dad. Okay. But how we talk to my mom, how we talk to other men, how we moved in church, those things were lessons for me. When I'm upset, I used to be shocked when my mom was talking to my dad, raising her voice. Wow. And I'm like, like how can you? Because I've seen my dad with other men. He can be violent,
Can be violent.
But never my mom would be there, and my dad would just
different.
I'm like, how? But now, as a man myself, I realize, actually, I can be aggressive when I need to be outside, but when I get home, I don't do any of that, and I can still be a man. Some men don't know good that's possible,
It's possible.
So through observing those things, I was getting lessons. So I advocate for that with men. Don't think you know even if you were raised by both parents. There are certain things that were norm in your home that are not right. So have those men you look up to. Spend some time with those men. There's a whole lot of things you will learn.
Wow. I like that because there's so many. I always say that in society, whatever you aspire to become or to be, there is someone that's probably done it before.
Yes.
And find them and then and then seek advice and seek support. We're gonna close soon, Muzi. There's a conversation that I'd like us to take further, maybe when we meet again, and I'm hoping you're gonna join us on the 16th. On the 16th at the Empowerment Conference, because we're gonna be talking a lot about young boys. So we get approached in this network by young boys that are fathers already as teenagers, and they are not present in their kids' lives, and then some of them also grew up without fathers. How would you support a boy like that is 19 years old, 20 years old, having a child with someone else, and the child lives with the mom? Usually they would say, I'm blocked to see my child because we're no longer together with my girlfriend. How would they, without going to courts and things like that, and then how would you advise them to try and find connection with the child?
One thing, and this goes back to the privilege of being married and knowing women. There's a lot of things, a lot of harm we men cause. Yes. And we're not aware of on our women, right? If a young boy has had a child with a lady, first thing you must realize, loyo muntu wesifazane, kubo they had dreams, they had hopes for her, right?
Yeah.
And this was not one of them.
Yeah.
And when every time she goes back home, they remind her, we don't get to hear that in our daughter, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, it doesn't matter how beautiful you are as a woman. Once you have a child out of wedlock in our societies, so as men, we should be aware of that. I contributed to that.
That's the impact.
Yes, I contributed to that. Yes, we have a child with this individual, but there are things she wanted. Maybe because I wanted a certain thing. So I think it's important because I'm privilege of marriage. I'm seeing it. If I have a good relationship with my wife, if I'm taking good care of her, she pours that into my kids. So if mentally she's right, she's okay, she pours that into my kids. So same thing applies. If the mother of your child has a lot of issues that are unresolved. The relationship you're going to have with the child is going to be difficult.
It's going to be difficult.
You know, but if you are sensitive to that, just have a conversation, in mediation. Someone will be told, keep in no, I live in a different age now. I don't believe in that. Okay. Once you have a child is knowing about you, everything that needs to be done to ensure that you are involved, do it.
You must do it.
Doesn't matter if you believe in it or not, as long as it's going to give you access to the child.
Yes.
So, thinking with us men, a whole lot of times, inconvenience. You know, they're not the main thing in our lives.
And they didn't choose us. You made them, and then but they take the risk. They become an inconvenience.
I wish we can be aware of that. I'm telling you, if you don't have a relationship with your child and the mother is blocking it, you know, if as a man you can commit to saying, I will go to that house, for instance, every morning, whether they like it or not. Walk my child to school. To
form a relationship with the child.
Just do that for 3 months. Not a week. Not one day when it's a
consistent.
Be consistent in doing that. So now as men, we think if I can just go one time in a birthday and have that conversation, they will understand. If it's Father's Day, I need content, they will understand. And you just need to go there. More than the child, there was a mother who was part of this, and the mother who's hurt, and the mother who probably hoped it will be her husband, and you didn't.
And she's disappointed.
You cannot ignore those things. You cannot ignore those dynamics.
It's a real issue.
It's a tough one.
Someone came to this show and said, Muzi, your dads are hot and cold, and my job as a mother is to protect my child because they get hurt by your behavior. You bring a birthday cake or you promise a birthday cake and you don't show up. I have to go quickly to the shops to get the cake and say it's from your dad. So that I'm trying to protect, I'm trying to cover up for you. And she said, we get tired of doing that. Eventually we expose you. So we always say to the dads, if you make promises, keep them. And I said in this show as well that when your child is big enough, go directly to them. You don't have to ask for permission to, like you're saying. If you have to walk them to the school, pick them up from school, especially if you can have access to them directly. They have a telephone. Just say, I'm going to pick you up. Tell your mom, I'm going to pick you up today.
And so remember another thing,
and that helps.
To that, to your question. Another thing like men can do. I know it's not easy. It's not easy when kuna emotions involved. But just take your time, go to the mother. Just go to the mother. Have a conversation with her.
How can I help?
I don't want, don't be defensive. Because men don't understand from raising a child from 1 to 2 years.
Maybe it just starts with simple things.
We don't understand what women go through to raise our kids.
It's tough.
They come to a brink of insanity because that's what children do.
So demanding.
For no reason, the following day you have to go to work. Have a conversation with the mother. By me not being present,
how can I
want to know the damage I caused in you. So I just want to know in you. And then how can I fix that?
And it's a conversation to have.
We have to.
And sometimes avoidance doesn't solve anything. And sometimes avoiding talking to the mom. I was talking to someone at my house last night about how I co-parent with the mother of my 14-year-old son. And it's never easy, but when we disagree on something, we always check ourselves. Is this in the best interest of him? How would he feel about this decision? And how would this decision impact him? And every time we do that, we very quickly get the right decision because we ask ourselves, is this serving his needs? Because he's still a teenager and is not is not an adult yet. So we have to remind ourselves, is this serving his needs at this point in his life.
And that
very quickly it neutralizes.
Yes. That relationship is important because kids are very manipulative.
Yeah, they're very manipulative.
As players see so so imagine if you don't stay together. If you don't have that relationship, your kids will pit you against each other.
Yes.
Because we think
and
kids are incapable.
Checking your response.
Yes, we think they're incapable of lying. These people lie
all the time.
So that relationship is very important with the mom.
Thanks, my brother. This is exciting. If you are following our channel, I'd like you to stay close because as part of season 5, we're going to talk a lot about how to navigate the parenting, especially for fathers who do not live with their kids. And I was talking to Muzi about the young ones that, and by the way, there's a different segment on this show that talks about fatherless fathers and how we heal from childhood trauma. And watch out, because I'd like you to subscribe to our channel and follow us, because there is a specific segment as part of season 5 that's going to talk about fatherless fathers as well as healing from childhood trauma. My friend, this was good. I really appreciate your time. Okay, all the best.